My point is that at this time, at this point of the book, the people have to do it on their own, and therefore there's no surprise that they're making mistakes and they're trying to figure things out. And they have to work everything out on their own. It's got to make sense to them. With that introduction, you have an interesting story, a tragic story, traumatic story. Basically, in this parsha, a rebellion breaks out against Moses. There's this gentleman, Korach, who happens to be Moses' cousin, and he basically says, why are you making yourselves the leaders, you and your brother? And he's a populist, so he basically says a lot of things that are in a way contradictory. On one hand, he says, we don't need any leaders. On the other hand, he says, I want to be the leader, right? It's a little bit of a contradiction. No, Korach says, we don't need any leaders. So why is Moses and Aaron raising themselves up above everybody else? Communists, we don't need any leaders. Stalin also doesn't want leaders. We're all comrades, right? But when someone says we don't need leaders, we all should be comrades. You got to be careful because really what they want is the power for themselves. So in a way, what he's claiming is contradictory, but that's what he says. We don't need, and then as it progresses, he basically goes more and more, and he starts questioning. He says, Moshe, so you claim you're the leader, and you claim Aaron is the priest. Maybe you made this up on your own. So now, if Moshe made something up on his own, in a way that questions the whole authority of the whole Torah, because the Torah, we have 613 commandments. Almost all of it is predicated on the prophecy of Moses. If you think about it, we heard 10 commandments from God. What about the other 603? We hear it from Moses. If Moses is not a prophet, or if Moses' prophecy is questioned, then the whole Judaism is questioned. So this is so it starts with a sort of a political maneuver who should be in charge. But this is very dangerous. Questioning Moshe's prophecy is very dangerous. I just want to take a break for a second and say that Maimonides has 13 principles. He articulates 13 principles of the Jewish faith, which one day we should do a class on the 13 principles, because that's another story. And there's debates whether or not Maimonides' 13 are the only way of looking at Judaism. Maybe people disagreed. Not everyone agreed that every single thing here is one of the 13 principles of faith. But Maimonides puts this in the 13 principles, and he talks about this in other places. He says one of the principles of the Jewish faith is the superiority of the prophecy of Moses. If you don't believe that Moshe is the greatest prophet, which is what the Torah says, then what happens? There's no Judaism. Why? Because then some other guy is going to come and say, God came to me and told me something, so let's cancel Moses' Torah. You may have heard about this. Maybe you call it Christianity. Maybe you call it Islam. That's essentially what they're saying. God comes to a prophet and alters the prophecy of Moses. They agree that Moses is a prophet, but they say we're changing the prophecy. So Maimonides says the principle of Jewish faith is, and it's articulated in the Torah, articulated in the 5 books of Moses, that Moshe was the greatest prophet. In fact, the last words of the 5th book is that never again will the rise of prophet as great as Moses. Why is it so important? Because if Moshe's prophecy is questioned, then the whole Judaism falls apart. So this is not a simple matter. It starts as a little quarrel about who's going to be in charge, but Moshe right away realizes that this is dangerous, and therefore he says, I cannot be the one to get involved here, because whatever I say, no worries. Moshe says, I can't be the one to solve this, because whatever I'm going to say, people are going to think I have a vested interest. So God himself has to come in and confirm that Moshe is the true prophet. And therefore, it's almost like Moshe says to God, it's sort of your problem. And then Moshe goes to Korach and he tries to talk and he tries to negotiate, but they're not open to negotiation. And the end of the story, you may know, is that Moshe says tells them that if I am the true prophet, the earth is going to open up its mouth and swallow you inside. And that's exactly what happens. And then after that, we read once again that God reiterates his choice in Aaron. And he basically says that each tribe should take, well, there's two tests. One test is that 250 people came and they offered incense, the people who were in Korach's camp, and the people offer incense, they died. Incense is a tricky issue. If you bring incense and you're not deserving, it could be detrimental. But later, the end of the story is that Moshe says, the God tells Moshe, each tribe should take a staff and put it in the tent of meeting in the temple. And Aaron puts a staff, and God will choose one. And Aaron's staff blossoms and gives forth shkedim, which is flowers, and shkedim, which is almonds. And that's the sign that God chose Aaron. Why is that the sign of all signs? That's another question, but that's the sign. So that's what God, after the story of Korach, when the earth swallows its mouth and swallows Korach, now God reiterates that no, God shows Aaron. You missed the best part. Moshe tells God, Moshe realizes that God has to step in because people think he has a vested interest, right? So God has to step in. So Moshe says, if God has not chosen me, then these people will die a natural death. But if God shows me, then the earth, God will create a creation, whatever that means. We can talk about that if we get there. And the earth will open up its mouth and swallow them inside. And that's what happens. Korach and his whole camp, Moshe, everyone comes, all the people come for the spectacle, to watch the show. Moshe says, separate from these people, because the earth, if they don't repent, it's going to swallow up. And that's what happens. Is an earthquake, or maybe if you're in Florida, I think depends. You have what do they call those? Sinkhole. There's a sinkhole. The earth opens up its mouth and swallows them up, and that's the sign. And later, the God shows the other sign, the reiteration of the choice in Aaron. So that's the story. It's a dramatic story, but there are so many levels of reading the story, thinking about what exactly did Korach want, and there's so many different ways of thinking about this. And I'm sorry. Good, yeah. Don't name his name Korach. We could talk about the name Korach, what it means, what each letter of Korach is. We can be here literally all week. So let's jump right in because there's a lot to do. I'm just going to read the nutshell. I apologize that it didn't print. I'm going to read this nutshell. Well, in the nutshell is the summary, but the Korach itself is going to start in the art scroll. It's going to start on page 821, Rebellion in the Wilderness, Parshat Korach. Here we go. The name of the Parsha Korach refers to Korach, which is a person, meaning head of the rebellion against Moses and Aaron, and is found in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. Korach incites a mutiny, challenging Moses' leadership and the granting of the kahuna priesthood to Aaron. Korach says this is nepotism. You took all the priesthood for yourself. You took the leadership for yourself. You give the priesthood to your brother, and he complains. Now, okay, he is accompanied by Moses' inveterate foes, Datan and Aviram. Talk about them later. Join them are 250 distinguished members of the community who offer the sacrosanct Ketoret incense to prove their worthiness of the priesthood. The earth opens up and swallows the mutineers, and a fire consumes the Ketoret offerers. So they basically get killed. This is very short. The drama, you have to read the story to get all the drama. A subsequent plague is stopped by Aaron's offering the Ketoret. Aaron's staff miraculously blossoms and brings forth almonds to prove that his designation as the high priest is divinely ordained. It's a little bit more complicated than that. God says that every tribe should put their staff in the tent of meeting, including Aaron, and only Aaron's blossomed. Like I said, why that one is a good question. We're also studying on Sunday. We're studying the story of the Exodus, and there we were talking a few weeks ago about Moses and Aaron taking the staff and what does it represent. So if you think about what does the staff represent here, it can help us for Sundays as well. Okay, God commands that the teruma, uplifting from each crop of grain, wine, and oil, as well as all firstborn sheep and cattle and other specified gifts, be given to the Kohanim priests. So again, reiteration of the position of the priesthood. They get gifts of produce every time people grow every year. The crop, you have to give a portion of the crop to the priests. Also, firstborn sheep and cattle, and certain specified gifts have to be given to the priests. Sounds like you want to be a priest. I recommend that it's not a great, it's not up to you because you have to be born into it, but it's not a great position because, they have to give you a little portion of the produce, but the priests, unlike in Egypt, where the priests had the best, they had tax-free land and they had a spiritual position in their worship. The priests in Judaism do not have a portion in the land of Israel. It's an agricultural society. You can't own real estate. You can't own farmland. So you're basically poor. You're basically dependent on the people. So there's no class that has all the advantages. So and priesthood has many burdens, but that's another story. But that's the priesthood. But again, here it finishes by saying that God is reiterating his choice of Aaron. And that is the story in a nutshell. There's so much to talk about, so much to say. So we're going to try to jump right in. I want to read inside at least a little bit of the drama because it's so dramatic and such an, I don't want to say beautiful. It is beautiful, but it is a sad story. Now, the simple way of reading the story, I'm going to say it right now. The simple way of seeing the story is Korach is just an egocentric, power-hungry person who wants to be in charge. That may be true, But what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's not where he started out. He started out as a distinguished person and as a spiritual person, and he has a spiritual philosophy that differs from Moses and Aaron. So it makes sense to understand what he said and what his mistake was. And the fact that he later became someone who was rebelling against Moses is almost the side effect of his real argument. His real argument is a spiritual argument, and he has a point. What he says has a point. It's almost like every great movement, if it catches fire and it spreads, it's because they have a point. Now, sometimes the point is premature. Sometimes the diagnosis is right and the solution is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. But who can disagree with Korach's claim? Everybody is holy. That's what he says, and all Jews are holy. So what he's saying is, in a way, very true, but it's dangerous. So, and it's wrong the way he says it and the solution he proposes. And if you want to get just as a teaser, the Kabbalists believe he is right, but he can only be right in the future redemption. In the current world, what he presents is utopia, and there is no such thing as utopia in the current world. And if you try to create utopia in the current world, you're going to create anarchy and chaos. So, in other words, when people are successful, in other words, Korach's claim is so appealing because it has some truth to it. But some truth doesn't mean it's the whole truth, and it's also very dangerous. But it makes sense to understand what he said and why he's right, and also why he's wrong. So, and to explain that, there are multiple interpretations and multiple perspectives. So we could dismiss the whole thing. Korach's ego lesson is don't be ego. Don't have a great ego. Okay, that's true, but there's a deeper story, and that's what we want to try to uncover. Go ahead, Ben, please.
Oh, just a quick question. Does he get swallowed up before the staffs are put all together, or?
Yeah, okay. He does. But Korach, but it's not that he wasn't warned. Moshe continuously tries to negotiate with them, and some of them want to talk to him, and some don't. So Moshe is going out of his way to sort of make peace and open negotiation. They're not interested in any negotiation. Now, part of the question is, why did the rebellion what sparked the rebellion specifically at this point? Moshe and Aaron have been the leaders at least since they left Egypt, which means at least a year and a half, at least, if not more, at least a year and a half since they left. In Egypt also, they had some leadership. So maybe 2 years. What happened at this point? So there's a lot of interpretations, and some are more technical and some more psychological. But one that the verse almost alludes to is Korach always wanted to rebel, but he understood that people were in love with Moses and Aaron, so it's not a good time. So what do? You have to wait for an opportunity. What's the opportunity? The opportunity is after last week, after the spies come back, and after the people know we're not going into Israel. So now people are a little bit disillusioned and a little bit upset, and in some ways a little bit in mourning. And when people are in mourning, it's very easy to break up and create fights. I don't have to tell you, it's not an uncommon thing that when people are mourning, around the passing of a loved one, that's a lot of times when families break apart, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of tension, and Korach is going to take advantage of that tension for his own purpose. Okay, we'll jump right in, and hopefully we'll have time to say some interesting perspectives. Okay, I'm going to read a few verses. This is number 16, like I said, in the book, no, I'm not sharing. Am I sharing it? I'll try again. Okay, in the article, it's page 821. I'm going to read a little bit different. I'm going to read from the screen here, so it may sound a little bit different, but the ideas are the same. Korach, son of Yitzhar, son of Kahat, son of Levi, So he's a prominent person. He's Moses' cousin. Took himself to one side, along with Datan and Aviram and sons of Eliav and the son of and On, the son of Pelet, descendants of Reuven. So these are prominent people. They confronted Moses together with 250 men from the children of Israel, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, men of repute. So they have at least 250 leaders. They assembled against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves." Rav Lachem. In the Art Scroll, better translation. It is too much for you. You're taking too much. You're taking too much power. Okay? For the entire congregation are all holy, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you raise yourself above the Lord's assembly? Okay? Right? Everybody is holy. Who could disagree with that? Verse 4, Moses heard and fell on his face. He falls down because he realizes this is dangerous. Because you question Moses, they question the whole Torah. So what does he say? He says, God has to step in. I can't step in. Now, God didn't tell him he's going to step in, but Moshe knew God has to. So he says in the morning, God is going to step in because God has to. Verse 5, he spoke to Korach and to all his company, saying, in the morning, the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and he will draw them near to him. And the one he chooses, he will draw near to him. Do this, Korach and his company. Take for yourselves censers. Place fire into them and put the incense upon them before the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses, he is the Holy One. He is the Holy One. You have taken too much upon yourselves, sons of Levi. Okay, so it's interesting. Korach himself was a tribe of Levi. Tribe of Levi was in some ways holier than the rest of the people. So he says, you have enough holiness. Don't try to become a priest. Moses said to Korach, please listen, sons of Levi. It is not enough that the God of Israel has distinguished you from the congregation of Israel to draw you near to him, to perform the service of the Mishkan of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them. Is that enough? You're the Levites? He drew you near, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, and now you seek the kahuna, the priesthood, as well? Therefore, you and the entire assembly who are assembled are against the Lord. For what is Aaron that you should complain against him? What did Aaron do wrong? You're really complaining against the Lord. Verse 12, page 823. Moses sent to call Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliab, but they said, we will not go up. Moshe comes and he wants to talk to them. They said, we're not talking to you. And here you see that they're frustrated about the fact that they were not allowed into Israel. Is it not enough that you have brought us out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the desert, that you should exercise authority over us? Now, this is a very sharp rebuke, because here we know that when I say the land, Torah says the land of milk and honey, that refers to Israel, because in the Torah, if God promises the Jewish people the land of milk and honey. Here, what does Korach say? Datan and Aviram, they refer to Egypt as the land of milk and honey. They say, is it not enough that you have brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the desert? Right? So they are now saying that Egypt was so great, and Moses and Aaron took us out, even though they were enslaved, but okay. Well, they'd rather be in Egypt than die in the desert, right? So that's what they're saying. Again, they're populists, they're manipulating the people, and they're now romanticizing the stay in Egypt, right? A year and a half later, you could say, oh, it wasn't so bad. That's what happened. When time passes, you could stop playing with people's memory and with collective memory. And it's also very easy to be ungrateful. Moshe takes them out of Egypt, but where are we now? And if we're not happy now, if it's too hot, if it's 100 degrees outside, we start complaining, we're unhappy. Oh, let's go back to Egypt. Egypt is not great, but these people are now using that same language that God refers to the land of Israel, flowing with milk and honey. They use that about Egypt. Moses, you took us out of a land flowing with milk and honey. So we're not. So 14. You have not even brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Even if you gouge out the eyes of those men, we will not go up. We're not coming to talk to you. Moses was exceedingly distressed, and he said to the Lord, do not accept their offerings. I have not taken a donkey from a single one of them, and I have not harmed a single one of them. I'm not getting rich on this job. I didn't take a donkey from them. Rashi says, when I came to Egypt and with my donkey to be with the people and to lead them, I didn't ask them to pay for my donkey. I didn't put in a reimbursement, right? Claim. I had nothing from them. And basically he continues and he says, Moses said to Korach, you and your entire congregation should be before the Lord, you, they, and Aaron tomorrow. Let each man take his censer and place incense upon it, and let each man present his censer before the Lord. There will thus be 250 censers, and let you and Aaron each take his censer. So each man took a censer, and they put fire upon it and placed it incense upon it, and they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Korach assembled all the congregation against them, and at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So Korach calls all the people for the spectacle. And the glory of the Lord appeared before the entire congregation. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, disassociate yourselves from this congregation, I will consume them in an instant. Meaning, God wants to kill everybody, because it's not just Korach and 250 people, but they now gathered everybody else for the show. So everybody else is now implicated. Moses arose and went to that. Yes, yes. And so Moses rose and went to Datan and Aviram, and the elders of Israel followed him. He spoke to the congregation, saying, please get away from the tents of these wicked men, and do not touch anything of theirs, lest you perish because of their sins. So they withdrew from around the dwelling of Korach, Datan, and Aviram, and Datan and Aviram went out, standing upright at the entrance of their tents, together with their wives, their children, and their infants. Moses said, with this you shall know that the Lord sent me to do all these deeds, for I did not devise them myself. If these men die as all men die, and the fate of all men will be visited upon them, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a creation, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them and all that is theirs, and they descend alive into the grave, you will know that these men had provoked the Lord. As soon as he finished speaking all these words, the earth beneath them split open. The earth beneath them opened its mouth and swallowed them and their houses and all the men who were with Korach and all his property. They and all they possessed descended alive into the grave. The earth covered them up, and they were lost to the assembly. All Israel were around them, fled from their cries, and they said, lest the earth swallow us up too. A fire came forth from the Lord and consumed 250 men who offered up the incense. And now, chapter 17, we have the next thing is what God says to each one to take the staffs, etc. So that is the story in short. We now going to go back to the beginning and see if we can unpack some of this and see what he claimed and why he claimed it, and what the deeper meaning is. Go ahead, Vicky, please.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. I have a question. You mentioned there was the infants there, so they basically were risking life of their wives and children, and were they also killed?
Yes, that's what it says. Everybody, yeah, their entire camp. Yeah, yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
So Hashem would speak to just Moshe, but everyone heard it.
Everyone heard it. Everyone witnessed at Sinai.
Huh?
At Sinai.
Okay.
Here they see the cloud. They knew. Oh, here they see the cloud. Yes. Yeah. So the people saw. The verse says that this verse 20. So 20 says, even before 19. Look at 19. 19 says, and the glory of Hashem appeared to the entire assembly. Kvod Hashem. When we say Kvod Hashem, the glory of God, it means the cloud, because in the Torah, God appears with a thick cloud of smoke, or smoke means cloud. So at Sinai, there's a cloud. And every time God shows up, there's a cloud. When on the tent of meeting, there was a cloud that represented that God's presence is there. So here, the cloud shows up, and people know that God is in our midst. God is here. They don't necessarily hear what God is saying because they're not prophets, but they know, they could see a symbol for God being here. At Sinai, they can't see God. It says you have not seen anything, but they heard. They saw the cloud, they saw the thunder, the lightning. They didn't see God. You can't see God, right? But they heard. And that's, no, nobody could see God. And by the way, that itself is the metaphor of the cloud. Because in the Kabbalah, later descriptions of God, you see that the Kabbalah refers to God as the infinite light. But in the Torah, it's cloud and smoke and thick smoke, arafel, thick cloud. And the cloud, the metaphor of the cloud is the opposite of light. The metaphor of cloud is that God is concealed, right? There's a verse in Tehillim, Psalms 91, Yoshev b'seter elyon, God dwells in the concealed. In other words, we do not understand the fact that we can't see God, not because we don't have the right glasses. We can't see God because God does not have a form. If you see something, it means a form is a definition, and definition is limitation, and God has no definition, no limitation, so there's nothing to see. So the symbol for that, how do you want to make a symbol for something that cannot be seen? Not light, but darkness, right? So the cloud is a metaphor for God is a symbol of God's presence, but yet yes, so that's interesting. So in the sense that there is a symbol, but the symbol is not that you know what it is, but you don't know what it is, right? But they don't hear the prophecy except for Sinai. That's another story. That's how Maimonides writes at great length. That's how they know that Moshe is a prophet. How do we know Moshe is a prophet? Because all the people hear God talking to him at Sinai. So they had sort of firsthand. They had this firsthand experience of the prophecy to Moses. And that's another whole story. I don't want to get into that, but that's unique about Judaism. Every other religion that makes a claim of revelation, and every religion makes a claim of revelation, there's always revelation to a very small group of people. One person, 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, and those people tell everybody else about it. So I don't want to get into that right now, but it's not very hard to start a religion. It's not so hard to convince, you're a little bit charismatic. You could convince people that you saw something. It's happened before. It's happened multiple times. There is no attempt to make up a story like the Jewish story, which is God revealed himself to many, many thousands of people, and they all survived to tell the tale to their children. That is unprecedented. There's no such story. Forget about it as true. It's not true. There's no other story like that. There's stories of mass revelation, and they all died. Only one person was left to tell the tale. Okay, so you're back to the starting point where there's only one person or a very small group of people which could conspire. But there is no precedent for a story that says that there's mass revelation and those people all passed it on to their children. So we have a unique story. And that's why the people believe in Moses, only because that's God spoke to one person. It's him and his disciples or him, right? So that's fine. It's not so hard. Again, if I'm a little bit charismatic, there are lots of false prophets in history. There's no shortage. It's not so hard to convince people that you experience something. It's impossible or close to, well, nobody attempted to convince, other than our story, no one attempted to convince people that they saw something and they told it to their children, or many people saw and many people told their children, and you are their children, and it was passed on to you by your ancestors, right? So that's, like I said, forget it. Whether or not you can get a conspiracy like that off the ground is another story. Nobody attempted to, and probably because it's a much better story, but it's very hard to do if it's not true. Okay, so my bias is that this is itself a proof to the authenticity of the event. The fact that it's a story that it cannot be made up. And if it would be made up, it would be replicated. Everything we have is replicated, right? Everyone could, but this cannot be replicated. Okay, but that's going to be beyond the story. It's not beside the point. It's related to the prophecy of Moses, so it's important. Okay, let's get back to the original claim of Korach. What does Korach say, and why is he right and why is he wrong? So essentially, if you want to go back to his essential claim, his essential claim could be found in verse 3, page 821. What does he say? They gathered together against Moses and against Aaron and said to them, "It is too much for you. For the entire assembly, all of them are holy, and Hashem is among them." In Hebrew, it's very profound. Ki kal ha'ida kulam kadoshim. The entire congregation is holy. God is in their midst. Why do you have to raise yourself? You're saying, I'm the leader. I'm holier than thou. I'm more spiritual than you. No, everybody is holy. Now, I'm going to take a minute to actually highlight Korach's claim and talk about why he is right. Then we could talk about why he is wrong. Now, there's a very big difference, just like there's a difference between Judaism and other religions in the sense, so it's actually important that we mention it, that God spoke to everybody at Sinai. So there is a very interesting introduction to Sinai. A few days before Sinai, if I'm not mistaken, it was the second day of Sivan. So it's 4 days before Sinai. Every day God sent a message to the people to prepare them for this event. And God says something profound. And it's so profound because it's revolutionary. Never in the history of any religion has anyone ever said this. What it says is, God tells the people, Ve'atem, you, all the people, Tiyuli, will be for me, Mamlechet Kohanim, a kingdom of priests, meaning every person is the priest. In every religion, there are the masses, and there are a few people who are spiritual and holy, and they stand between God and the people, and they represent the people before God. But the rest of the people that are not spiritual enough to speak to God directly, so you have the class of people who are priests, and they sort of are the intermediaries between God and the people. That's virtually what happens in every religion. What happens here, God tells the Jewish people, no, everybody, the entire people is a people of priests. God has a relationship with every individual person. Every person is a priest. Everybody is everybody is holy. That's what happened at Sinai, and that's why God didn't speak to the people through Moses. He did so later for the rest of the Torah. But the most important revelation, Sinai, where God communicates the 10 Commandments, God speaks to every individual. Well, we say there's 600,000 men between 40 and 60. So, because there's 600,000 men between 40 and 60. So you want to double that for women, and then you want to put the population under 20, right? So we're talking, it could be over, it's for sure over 1.5 million people. That's the numbers the Torah is telling us. But in any case, the point here is everybody, God speaks to everybody because everybody is priests. Everybody is holy. That's what God says at Sinai. So the question is, if so, Korach says, if so, why do you need Aaron? Why do you need a high priest? We're all priests. We're all holy. That is the question. That is the question. That's the Korach's claim. I think this is very persuasive. What do you think? I think it's super persuasive. I could sign on, right? We're all the same. We're all holy. God speaks to everybody. Why do we need a leader? Or why do we need Aaron? Or why do we need a Moses? So there are many ways to start unpacking what he said, why what he said was wrong. I'll start from the most basic level. Is it true that everybody is holy? Answer, yes and no. What do I mean? If you turn to the Torah and go back to the third book, there is actually a parsha, a portion that is called the portion of Kiddushim, the portion of holy. And this is a fascinating parsha. Why is it so fascinating? Because most of the third book is the book about the priests, talking about the offerings that you bring in the temple and what type of offerings and who would bring the offerings in the temple with the priests. Yet there's one parsha, and then you have the service of Yom Kippur, which in the times of the temple, the high priest did everything on Yom Kippur. Everybody else just came to watch. I mean, everyone fasted, but no one did the service. It was the high priest during the service. And then the next parsha is called Kiddushim, holy. And what does it talk about? It talks about everyday transactions. When you plant your field, the gifts of produce that you give, how to treat other people, love your fellow as yourself is in that parsha. Basically, holiness is for everybody, not just for the priests. Now, the opening statement of that parsha, if you look at page 657, if you want, you could look. Otherwise, you could trust me. I'm going to try to read it correctly. You don't have to look. I'm going to try to read it correctly. Here is the verse. Hashem, page 657. Hashem spoke to Moses saying, speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy. Kiddoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. Why? For holy am I, Hashem, your God, which is a fascinating statement. Because it says God is holy, so we have to be holy. You can argue, what do we have? What kind of connection do we have with God? God is infinite. God is spiritual. God is creator. We're creation. But no, if God is holy, we have to be holy. We have a part of God within us. If God is holy, we're holy. Okay. Seems very similar to what Korach is saying, but there's a subtle difference that is critical. What is the difference? The difference is that if you look in our parsha, page 821, what does it say? It says, for the entire assembly, all of them are holy in the present. Everybody's holy. What does God tell the people in page 657? He says, speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy. Tihiyu, future tense. What's the difference? The difference is Korach is saying everybody is holy and therefore everything is fine. You don't have to grow. You don't have to increase your holiness. Everybody is holy. Of course, everyone's holy. So what does Korach say? So that's it. So you're done. No spiritual growth. Everybody is holy. Everyone is perfect. Everyone is beloved. Everyone's perfect just the way they are. Now you see that that's true. Everybody is holy. But if that's your attitude, that's dangerous because it means there's no growth. What does God tell the people? Of course you're holy, but that's beside the point. The interesting thing is, Tihiyu, you shall increase. Why? Because God is holy. In other words, if God is infinite, then there's infinite levels of holiness to increase too. So Korach says, you're holy, you don't have to do anything, you'll go on vacation. Moses says, we need leaders. Why do we need leaders? Why do you need Aaron? To inspire people to grow and increase in their holiness. Why do we have to increase in our holiness? We are already holy. It's true. You are already holy. But you could increase. Why? Because God is infinite, so you're infinite, so you can grow. So if someone says you're perfect, you're amazing, you're perfect, it's a compliment that makes you feel good. But if you think about it in every area of life, if I tell you, let's say you're a musician, I say, I think you maxed out. I think you're good. You can never grow. You have no more room to grow. It's really offensive. It basically means that's all you can do. And we innately understand there's more we can do. We want more, right? So we say, we understand no matter how good you are, there's potential we can keep growing. But Korach says, everybody is holy. If everyone's holy, everything is fine. There's no need to create tension, no need to create a desire and yearning to grow, because everybody is already holy. And if everyone's already holy, who needs Moses and Aaron? Moses and Aaron's job is to inspire people. But what does inspire people? Inspire them to grow. But if you inspire people to grow, the implication is they're not good right now. But everyone's good right now. So everybody's happy. Everyone's good. What's the point of growth? If there's no growth, there's no leadership. If there's no leadership, there's no reason to grow. So in that sense, Korach was correct that everybody is holy, but Korach is incorrect because he defines their holiness as something has already been achieved, and there's no room to growth. And the truth of the matter is that no, we are holy, correct, but we have to grow in our holiness. Because there's infinite potential, and therefore we need people, spiritual people like Moses, like Aaron, to inspire us to keep growing, because God is infinite, we can grow infinitely. That's point one. We're going to start end early today, so I have 8 minutes. 8 minutes, I want to say something that I have not said before, ever. In other words, in the last 19 years of reading Korach. So I think this is, and also I'm going to try to say something that's broad that can be applied to many different areas. So I'm going to give the Kabbalistic language, maybe for 60 seconds, and then try to explain what this means in practical terms. So that's the roadmap for the next few minutes. Okay, so far so good. Everybody's happy. Didn't say anything too radical. Everything is fine. Okay, good. Now, there's another interpretation, which I'm not talking about, that we'll talk about on Friday when we talk about the Hasidic and Kabbalistic interpretation. That we'll do on Friday, God willing, in good health. But right now, we're going to do another, also a Hasidic interpretation, but one that I have not said before. Okay. The Kabbalah says, I'm just going to say this right out, I'm going to put it right out there, that I'm just going to give the Kabbalistic terms, and then we'll talk about what that means. Kabbalah says that Korach is offended. Korach doesn't like Aaron because, not just because of their ego, because they come from a different perspective. And they come from a different spiritual source. And it's a little cryptic, but we'll hopefully unpack it. Aaron is chesed, Aaron is kindness, Aaron is love, Aaron is expression, Korach is discipline. Discipline is limitation, is holding back. Korach is discipline. So Korach cannot understand Aaron, cannot accept Aaron, because one is chesed, kindness, giving, and one is discipline. So that's why Korach rebels against Aaron. And according to the Kabbalah, Gevura, strength, discipline is Korach, and in general, Levites are strength, discipline, and priests are love and kindness. Now, if you understand this, you understand everything you need to know about the dispute with Korach and Aaron, and everything the sages say about this, because the sages also offer commentary, and there's sort of no end to the applications of this principle. But hopefully I could convey it in next few minutes. What is the difference between chesed, kindness, love, and discipline? And some people like kindness, like love, want to be accepted, and some people do not want to. They want to be they want discipline to reign supreme. What do I mean? So let's start from the beginning. What's the difference between Aaron and the Levites? The Levites are unique. They're special. They were chosen to serve. I'm not going to say chosen. They were selected to serve in the temple, not the main roles of the temple, but sort of the secondary roles to transport the temple, to teach Torah to the people. But they're unique. They also did not receive a portion of the land of Israel. What's the difference between the priests and the Levites? Difference is like this. The Levites were not supposed to be the people serving in the temple. It was supposed to be the firstborn. It was supposed to be the Bechorim, the firstborn. What happens was like this. When it came to the sin of the golden calf, everybody served the golden calf, including the firstborn. So now, the firstborn lost their right to be unique and serve in the temple because they served the golden calf. Who was selected in their place? Selected in their place were the Levites because the Levites did not sin. In other words, the Levites are who they are, not because they were born into it, but because they earned it. That's the Levites. What did Aaron do to become special to be a priest? The answer is nothing. He was chosen by God, not because of anything he did. What did Moses do to be chosen? Maybe it's debatable. Doesn't really matter. Let's assume for the purpose he was selected because, well, he's also a Levite, so let's put Moses around. Let's keep Moses out. Aaron was selected because God chose him. He didn't do anything to deserve it. Korach, he's a Levite. Why is he a Levite? Because of what they did. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. Now, there's two models. One model is people who realize there's an issue of priesthood. You understand and you feel that there's kindness and there's love, and God is giving you things that you're not deserving. God's giving you blessing, and you want the divine blessing, and you want help from God, from other people, from your spouse, from your grandmother, from everybody. You're open to kindness. But opening to kindness means I'm receiving from other people. Some people want to be self-made. That's Korach. He's a Levite. He got what he is. The Levites become what they are because of judgment. Judgment means because they are deserving. They didn't get anything as a gift. And some people say, I don't want a gift. I don't want to say that I need you. I want to achieve what I want to achieve on my own. And that's the model of Korach. And basically, if I want to achieve everything on my own, I don't want a leader inspiring me. I want to self-generate anything I have. So this is a total different model than Aaron. And the mistake is that both are true, but you have to have a little bit of both. And Korach doesn't want to have any kindness and any love. He wants to be completely self-sufficient, right? There was a whole dispute. I don't want to get political, but there was this whole dispute when Barack Obama, the president of the United States, said, God forbid, he uttered the words. He said that people think, because someone said that they built it themselves, they don't need the government. And Barack Obama said, no, you didn't build it by yourself. And it was this whole thing. To tell an American that they're not self-made is like heresy, right? It's like impossible. How could you say I didn't build my business? I built my business. So Obama was saying no, but who paved the roads?
Exactly.
But Americans can't hear it. It was not a politically wise thing to say, because we want to think of ourselves as self-sufficient. Korach says, I'm self-sufficient. I don't need anybody. And now that you could apply this in different areas, because if you don't need anybody, you're not vulnerable. You don't need your spouse, and you don't need a relationship with your children. I'm self-sufficient. Okay. And there is something to that, because we all need to feel that we could be the person we want to be. We don't need outside influences, but we can generate it by ourselves. And there's a deep need within the person to say, I am this because I earned it, not because it was gifted to me. But if you take that to the extreme, you're going to get yourself swallowed into the earth, which is what happens to Korach. If you say, really, I'm self-made, I don't need anybody. I don't need to open up and get love from other people, from the people around me, or I don't need spiritual love from God or from the priest or someone inspiring me, or a community to inspire me. That's essentially, once you have a community, you need leadership, because otherwise it's anarchy. But the Korach says, but he starts from a true point. He starts with, I want to generate my own inspiration. I want to achieve anything I achieve. I want to achieve it by myself. I want to be self-made. And if I'm self-made, then I don't need other people. And there's truth to that. That's gevura, that's discipline, that's strength. Strength means you earned it. And we have a deep need to earn to earn the things that we have and the blessings we have. The Talmud says that a person would rather have one measurement of produce that he planted and he worked for on his own than 9 that were gifted to him. Because you want to feel that you earned it. This is you. It's not just handed to you. So Korach says, I don't want a leader to inspire me. I don't want a community. I want segregation. I want gevura. I want to be a man for myself. And I want everybody to be a man. And who should get? You don't need Aaron. You don't need gifts from above. Everybody will get what they are deserving. And if you just generate a little inspiration, that's what you have. And everybody is self-sufficient. That's the key point. And there's something to that. There's something to gevura, which is elevate yourself. But you can't just have that, because the world and every person is imperfect. We need the kindness from above, and we need other people to give us, and we need other people for us to be able to be complete, to have relationships. Now, some people have a very difficult time with relationships, not just because they don't want to commit, because relationship means being vulnerable. Being vulnerable means I need you. I need you as a recognition that I am not self-sufficient. A lot of times it takes a lot of people a long time to admit that. Unfortunately, some people within a relationship will not admit to themselves that they need it, right? Because they say, I'm perfect, I'm here because why not? We're enhancing each other, but I don't need you. If I feel I need you, that means I have a whole new respect for you. That means I'm opening up myself for you. And that is what's called chesed. Chesed is the sensitivity that I'm insufficient, I need the divine kindness. Now, we need both. We need to be able to give and be self-sufficient, but we also have to be open to leadership, to other people, to people outside of us giving to us, and we have to be open to receive from them. And that's what Korach doesn't want to do. And if you don't want to do that, you're gonna crumble. You're going to implode. And that's the idea of the earth swallowing you down, because the earth without the heaven, the discipline without the chesed, without the divine kindness, is going to implode. And that's what happens. And there's so much more to say about this, but I have to stop right now, unfortunately. But something to think about. And ultimately, Korach becomes the egocentrical person. He says, I don't want a leader. So ultimately, he's full of ego, he's full of himself. But it starts with a real claim that there is a truth to the fact that we say there have to be certain things that you generate on your own and you create on your own and are yours, and you develop that by yourself. You need certain aspects of that. But to say that is the only thing I have in my life, that's not going to work. And that's going to implode. So that's the story in short. A lot more to say. Thank you all for joining. Go ahead, Vicky. But you're on mute. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I actually didn't raise my hand because I know you have to leave.
Yeah.
But I did have a question about the sincerity of Korach. I think he was sincerely, he sincerely believed because they were willing to sacrifice their infants and wives and everybody. So is that true, or they were just craving for power?
So the answer is like this. The answer is once the ego gets involved, it takes you over, and then you're not sincere. But in the beginning, you're sincere. It's very easy to get into a disagreement. It's very easy to get it's very easy it's very easy to start a dispute. In other words, to start to get into a dispute, and you say, I'm here for ideological reasons. But once the dispute starts, it's actually very hard to say, to realize how much of this is my ego and how much of it is the ideology. So it's very dangerous. So I think at the start, he certainly was idealistic, but it's very hard to separate. It's very easy for the ego to come in and take over. And I think that's what has happened.
And in any case, the idea sometimes, as you said, takes over, and you
Yeah.
don't realize it. And you
Right. Yeah.
realize it's not an idea; it's ego taking over because the desire to prove that you're right.
Indeed. Yeah, you're saying the ego takes over. Yeah. Okay, we're going to stop, unfortunately, but we'll continue, and God willing, on Friday we can continue this theme and broaden it. So thank you all for joining. Thank you very much.